My husband caught me cheating with an old school friend, a mistake I thought I could keep hidden. Now he's demanding a DNA test for our child and has already filed for divorce. The look in his eyes isn't just hurt. It's like he doesn't recognize me anymore. And I'm left wondering if I've lost everything in one reckless moment. My husband and I are both in our late 40s, and we've been married for over 24 years. We have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. For privacy, I won't go into too much detail about our lives, just enough to explain what happened. For the first 16 years, our marriage was truly wonderful. But something from my past, a short, careless affair, ended up coming to light. And it changed everything. The affair happened with an ex-boyfriend and was eventually revealed to my husband by that man's ex-wife. Let me back up and explain. About 7 years into our marriage, I went to my 15-year high school reunion. I was on the planning committee, so I traveled ahead of time 6 days early with our 2 daughters. My husband flew in the day before the main event. We all stayed at my parents' house, and everything seemed perfectly fine. While I was there without my husband, I ran into my old boyfriend, let's call him Reed. Things escalated quickly. Reed and I crossed boundaries several times during those few days. He was married too, with 2 kids. He told me he was unhappy and that his marriage was falling apart. In contrast, my marriage was full of love, support, and stability. Looking back, I think I was chasing the thrill of youth. I was deep into motherhood and homemaking, and I missed a feeling of excitement, even though I hate myself for acting on it. For those 3 days, we acted like we did back in high school, sneaking around, hiding not only from our spouses but also from our parents. 2 days before the reunion, we came to our senses. We realized we had made a terrible mistake. We promised never to talk again and to move forward as if it had never happened. The reunion went smoothly. I even introduced my husband to Reed and his wife. We all chatted together, and I remember feeling absolutely crushed inside. Seeing my husband and Reed standing side by side, I couldn't believe what I'd done. My husband was and still is the love of my life, my rock. I felt overwhelming guilt. Right then and there, I vowed never to tell him. I knew it would break his heart. Instead, I decided I'd spend the rest of my life making it up to him. For the next 9 years, our marriage was almost perfect. I poured myself into our life together. I gave him everything I had and made sure he always felt loved and supported. I took care of the kids, ran the household, and tried to make sure every day had a moment of affection for him. My guilt was always with me, but so was my joy in being his wife and the mother of our children. During that time, we had our 3rd child, our son, 8 years ago. My husband was thrilled to have a boy, and they became incredibly close. To be fair, he's always been a loving and affectionate father, equally devoted to our daughters. Everything seemed to be going well until the day he came home early from work and said we needed to talk. I assumed something was wrong at his job, but then he said he had spoken to Reed's ex-wife earlier that day. The moment he mentioned their names, my heart dropped. I felt lightheaded and could barely breathe. He told me that Reed had confessed the affair to his ex-wife. Apparently, Reed had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of Parkinson's disease 6 years ago and was now in an advanced stage. They had been divorced for 7 years. Something I didn't know. Despite that, she and their children still helped care for him since his condition had worsened. Overcome with guilt, he finally confessed. She's remarried now, but she told my husband because she felt a moral obligation. She believed he had a right to know. I actually agree, but I wish she had come to me first so I could have told him myself instead of him hearing it from someone else. I begged him for forgiveness, reminding him how long ago it was, how it never affected our marriage, and how committed I've always been to him and our children. He was devastated. I'd never seen him so angry. For an hour, he unleashed his emotions. He used harsh words and called me names. I didn't say a word. I just sat there and cried, because I believed every word he said. He had always been a wonderful husband, not just to me but to my whole family. After his outburst, he left in his truck without saying where he was going. About an hour later, he called to say he'd be back that evening. He told me to gather the kids for a family meeting and to prepare to tell them what I had done. I was stunned. I asked him not to involve them, told him they didn't need to carry this weight, that it should be mine alone. But he insisted. He said they needed to know the truth about their mother, and he told me not to say anything to them until he returned. I made dinner for the kids, but I couldn't eat. My nerves were shot. They asked where their dad was, and I told them he'd be home later. I said we'd be having a family meeting that night and asked them to be ready at 8:30. They asked what it was about, but I just told them we'd talk then. I texted my husband to let him know we were ready for 8:30. I also asked if he'd call so we could go over what we were going to say, but he didn't reply. At exactly 8:30, he walked through the door and into the kitchen, where we were all sitting. His energy was completely different. He wasn't angry anymore. He was calm, even warm. He greeted the kids with kisses and hugs, just like always. Then he sat down, looked at me, and asked if I wanted to start. I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't get the words out. Tears just started pouring down my face. I told him I couldn't go through with it. He then calmly explained to the kids, in simple terms, what had happened. My daughters started crying and expressing their anger, while my 8-year-old son just looked confused and scared. They asked when all of this had taken place, and I told them it had been years ago, though I couldn't remember the exact year. My son, with tears in his eyes and a terrified look on his face, asked his dad if he was going to leave us. Hearing that broke me. I started sobbing, unsure of how my husband would respond. Thankfully, he reassured our son that he wasn't leaving, but added that he'd be sleeping in the spare twin bed in our son's room for a while. He asked if that was okay, and our son quickly replied, "Sure, Dad." My husband told the kids things were going to be a bit tough for a while, and he wanted them to understand that things between us might not feel the same for some time, maybe ever. But he also promised that their daily lives wouldn't change, and encouraged them to speak up if anything felt off, so we could handle it together. Our marriage changed that day. It took over a year, 13 months, before we even began to feel like husband and wife again. We didn't return to full intimacy, but he did start allowing some physical closeness. That went on for about 3 months, though only when he felt like it. He wouldn't initiate anything himself, but I would take things as far as he would allow, day by day. Eventually, we started making love again, but something was missing. He couldn't look me in the eyes while we were intimate, and the tenderness just wasn't there anymore. He admitted that seeing my face brought up images of my old boyfriend, and that would instantly ruin the moment for him. I didn't fully get it, but my therapist said this kind of reaction isn't unusual. She explained that, for some men, this is a way of reclaiming their masculinity after it's been wounded by infidelity. I know it sounds selfish or one-sided, but for some odd reason, it turns me on when he takes control like that. And I find myself looking forward to those moments. Still, I miss how things used to be. He used to be so giving, always making sure I felt satisfied. Now, it feels like he just uses me to meet his needs. He's made it clear he won't go out of his way for me the way I do for him, if you know what I mean. It's like, in that area, I'm permanently tainted to him. It's a strange dynamic, but it's been our reality for the past 3 years. I've learned to accept it as our new normal. And honestly, despite everything, things had been going pretty well until this past January. It all started with something that should have been fun. A school project. My son came home one night and over dinner told us about a project his 8th grade history class was working on. They were tracing their family roots in America as far back as they could. His teacher mentioned that using DNA kits was optional, but some of his friends were planning to, and he wanted to do the same. My husband thought it sounded like a great idea and said he'd been interested in doing one for a while. I smiled and agreed. After dinner, we watched a movie as a family, but my mind wasn't really on it. I was distracted by a thought I couldn't shake, something that could undo everything we'd worked so hard to rebuild. Even though I was fairly certain my husband was my son's biological father, there was a slight chance he wasn't, based on the timing. He was conceived during Alumni Week, when I had been intimate with both men. I know what you're probably thinking, and I get it, but I need to be honest. After the movie, our son went to his room, and my husband and I started getting ready for bed. I asked him to sit with me. I needed to tell him something important. Grabbed his shaving kit and left. I asked him to stay and talk, but he walked out. I didn't want to scare our son by making a scene, so I let him go without resistance. I tried calling and texting, but he didn't respond until the next morning. When he called to say he was coming home to talk, I felt relieved. I thought we'd gotten through worse before. Surely we could handle this too. When he walked through the door, I rushed to him, wrapped my arms tightly around his torso and his arms, and begged him to look me in the eyes. He finally did, looking tired and frustrated. I told him, "You're the only man I've ever truly loved. I'll do anything for you, you know that." I said I was 99% sure he was our son's biological father, but I wanted to be transparent about the risk. In the first place, that crushed me. I broke down and told him that if I could change the past, I would, but I can't. All I can do is take responsibility and do better from now on. He then told me what was going to happen. The whole family would take DNA tests. If the results showed my son wasn't his, he would be the one to tell him. Then, he'd file for divorce and seek full custody. I agreed, but told him again I truly believed he was the father. I also asked if we could keep sleeping in the same bed and continue our relationship. He said no. Instead, I'd be sleeping on the pull-out couch in our room. It hurt, but at least he was still willing to share the space. We all took the tests. Thankfully, the results showed that my husband is, without a doubt, our son's biological father. He helped our son finish a school project, and he told me he was relieved. I thought that meant things would finally go back to how they were, but they haven't. I'm still on the couch. My husband's distant. He only really talks to me when the kids are around, especially our son, or when our daughters come visit. He also joined a local hiking club and was even made vice president. So now, if he's not with our son after dinner, he's out hiking or busy with club meetings. It's been nearly 4 months of this. I feel so lonely, like I've been left behind. I want my husband back, the one I used to know, the one who loved me without walls between us. If anyone has any advice, I'm listening. I've done everything I can think of for him, beyond what I'm already doing, as I mentioned earlier. But no matter what I try, I can't seem to break through his emotional walls. Deep down, I know he'll never forget what I did, and maybe he'll never forgive me either. I've made peace with that, as long as there's still a chance we can find our way back to the love and respect we once shared. My feelings for him have only grown stronger, but I'm scared he's fallen out of love with me. Thanks for taking the time to read this and for understanding where I'm coming from. Quick update. I'm back to answer some of the questions I keep getting. First, my ex and I dated through most of high school. I broke things off shortly after starting college because the long-distance thing just wasn't working. Second, we reconnected when I came back home. That's how we ended up back in touch. We were both on the high school reunion committee, and everyone had a list of names to call. I specifically picked the list that had his name. So yeah, I was the one who made the first move. At the time, I wanted something to happen between us. And when it did, I felt a deep sense of guilt. But it also made me reflect on myself and become a better person. Third, my husband has never pressured me into anything. I've always been a willing participant, and most of the time, I'm the one initiating things. While I do wish he showed me more affection like he used to, I've accepted the shift in our relationship and appreciate whatever attention he gives me. When he's happy, I'm happy. Fourth, he's never cheated on me, not once. I'm absolutely sure of it. His focus has always been fully on our family. He's a good man, a wonderful father, and the best husband anyone could ask for. Decided he wants a divorce. Just saying it out loud fills me with sadness, regret, and a deep sense of loss. That's how I've felt ever since he told me, about a month and a half ago. I did everything I could to change his mind, but he had already made his decision, was already set on moving forward without me. He said he wanted to start a new life and hoped I would do the same. He thanked me for the good years we had before I betrayed his trust, and for all the effort I put into saving the marriage. But he also said the affair, my dishonesty, and the lack of openness damaged his ability to trust me. Still, he acknowledged that I've been a great mom, and he wants us to stay close and co-parent as best as we can for the sake of our children. We're handling everything outside of court, so the legal part will just be a formality. Our communication is so solid that his lawyer even asked us if we were sure about going through with the divorce. I told him I wasn't, but I respect his choice. Everything should be finalized within the next year. One of the hardest things ahead is selling the family home, the place where we built our lives, where our kids were conceived and raised. Even though the market's good and will make a decent profit, the property values have gone up so much that I can't afford to buy another home on my own. I'm currently looking for an apartment. My husband plans to buy a new place too, probably closer to his job. Our kids are doing okay. My son has been amazing. He's been like a guardian angel to me. His support has helped me get through some really dark times. My daughters have been great too, though they're both focused on school and don't come home much. I'm planning to start job hunting later this year, but for now, I'm taking a couple of months to focus on myself. The stress of the past 5 years really took a toll on me. I gained some weight, and my doctor recently warned me about my blood pressure and overall health. I don't drink alcohol, so food became my way of coping. Unlike my husband, I don't work out or eat particularly well, and that's definitely added to my weight gain, especially lately. My goal now is to get back to the weight I was when we first got married. In closing, I just want to thank everyone who's offered support and kind words. I never thought my story was all that interesting, but apparently, it resonates. Please, don't feel sorry for me, I'm okay. The worst is behind me, and I'm moving toward a brighter future. Who knows? Maybe one day my husband will change his mind, or maybe he won't. Either way, I'm grateful. Alright. That's the end of that story. Let's keep things moving and jump into another one. If I could give just one piece of advice about divorce, it's this. Don't go through with it unless there's truly no other way. In my case, there was no abuse, no betrayal. We were together for 8 mostly good years and had 4 kids. Things started to shift around year 5 when I got a big promotion at work. That's when I began to feel like my husband was holding me back from the success and lifestyle I thought I deserved. We weren't doing great financially, but now I was earning more than him. I was working longer hours, while his hours were cut back. That meant he was spending more time at home, and I started resenting him for it. He got to be home with the kids while I barely saw them. I'd come home some nights and find the dishes undone, or the kids not fed yet, and I'd get mad. It didn't matter what it was, I'd find something to be upset about. He'd keep saying he'd try harder, but he'd also tell me how hard it was being home all the time. That just made me angrier. Things got worse over the next couple of years. I kept working long hours, and his work stayed inconsistent. Every time he offered to work more, I'd complain. If he worked too little, I'd complain about the money. If he tried to point out how I kept contradicting myself, I'd just tell him to figure it out. I knew that hurt him, but I said it anyway. And often, truthfully, I resented him, and I pulled away from the relationship. I knew I was hurting him, but I didn't care. In my mind, if he didn't want to get hurt, then he should have at least tried harder to make me happy. That's the mindset I had when I started talking to another guy at work. I used to see him as just a friend. We'd chat at work, nothing serious at first. But then those conversations carried over into texts at home. Texts turned into exchanging pictures and videos. Before I knew it, we were finding excuses to be alone together. I knew it was wrong, but it made me feel alive, something I hadn't felt in years with my husband. I was tired of being unhappy, and for once, I told myself I was doing something just for me. The worst moment came one evening when I got home at a reasonable hour. My husband had cleaned the entire house, made dinner, and picked out a movie for us to watch as a family. A few years earlier, that would have made me so happy. But that night, I couldn't even look at him. I pretended to be sick and spent the whole evening in bed. He checked on me constantly and even brought me different food, trying to make me feel better. I felt awful, but instead of guilt, I felt angry at him for making me feel that way. By the end of the night, I was texting the other guy again. In the following weeks, it didn't matter what my husband did, it all felt wrong. Just his presence irritated me. He'd get upset over how cold I was, and I'd push him until he lost his temper because I knew it would happen eventually. After our arguments, he'd usually apologize for things I told him he did wrong, even if they weren't true. I never apologized though. In fact, I'd often twist things to make him feel worse. I convinced myself I was right just because he was wrong. That was all that mattered. When he eventually found out about the other guy, I acted like I didn't care. I saw him trying to hold back tears, and even though it hurt me inside, I wouldn't let him see that. He was completely vulnerable when I told him I wanted a divorce. I could practically hear his heart breaking. He begged me to reconsider, said we could fix things together, but I didn't really want to fix anything. I mostly ended things with the other guy not because I wanted to, but because I knew I could always go back to it later. My husband was trying, and sometimes I'd acknowledge that, but most of the time, I was mean. I criticized everything. I don't know what more he could have done to make me happy, maybe just gotten a better paying job so I wouldn't have to work. He said he was trying, but trying and finding are two different things. Around then, I found a couple of online groups. I started posting about my marriage from only my point of view. The feedback I got was full of support and validation. It made me feel justified. The more I posted, the more people cheered me on. They said my husband wasn't worth it. That encouragement fed my ego. I started saying awful things to him, sometimes ignoring him completely. I was so sure I was right, so sure that I went and hired a lawyer. Within a few weeks, I had filed for divorce. I kept going back to those websites. They gave me more confidence to go through with it. And I did. The whole process went smoothly. My husband didn't ask for much, just that we tried to work things out. But I didn't care. He was shattered. But I felt free. I could do whatever I wanted, without guilt or explanation. It felt amazing. But that feeling didn't last. Within the first month of him moving out, I missed garbage day 3 times. The dishes piled up. Laundry sat around so long I had to sniff clothes to see if they were clean enough to wear. My kids didn't smile much anymore. My oldest had seen messages between me and the other guy, and she knew her dad still wanted to fix things. It didn't take long for her to stop talking to me, except to ask to stay at her dad's house. The younger kids followed her lead. I tried to make them happy with toys and gifts, but the joy never lasted. Work became harder too. Without help at home, I couldn't work all those extra hours. Eventually, I started calling my ex to watch the kids. He always came when he could. When I'd get home, the dishes would be done, laundry folded, sometimes even dinner made. He never said much, just told me to call if I needed anything, then quietly left. He always looked so sad walking out the door. A few months later, my friends convinced me to go on a date. Just dinner and a movie. At first, I was excited, but halfway through dinner, the guilt hit me like a truck. It got so bad that I skipped the movie and went straight home. About a week later, after crying more than I ever had, I found myself in a therapist's office. I told her everything from the work fling to the divorce. She didn't agree with my decisions or the advice I'd gotten online. I started going back 2 or 3 times a week. At first, I just wanted to prove I was right. But the more I talked, the more I realized how wrong I'd been. It broke me. I don't think I've ever cried as much as I did during that first month of therapy. I spent nearly $2,000 on sessions before it finally hit me. Yes, my ex had flaws, but mine were worse. I had said and done so many cruel things I wouldn't tolerate from someone else. Yet he stayed. I still remember him asking, during one of our lawyer meetings, not to go through with the divorce. I did it anyway, and then I bragged about it online, like I had accomplished something. I was so wrong. A couple of weeks ago, I caught him just as he was leaving and asked if there was any chance we could get back together. His eyes filled with tears, and a few slid down his cheeks. He said he didn't know if he could. The pain had been too much. For too long. He told me that part of him had always hoped I'd realize how much he loved me up until the day I signed those papers. When I did, he let out a big sigh. Not of relief, but defeat. He said that moment hurt more than anything, and he didn't know if he could ever trust me again. I don't blame him. I broke a man who, in hindsight, was a great husband. I took a loving father out of our home. I stripped my kids of a complete family. And for what? A taste of so-called freedom? Now I spend most of my free time alone, either sitting quietly at home or back on that therapist's couch. If you're thinking about divorce, don't just listen to random strangers on the internet. Look at yourself first. Think about what you can change. That goes for both men and women. Divorce isn't fun. Life after divorce is no fairy tale. Watching your ex-husband broken and your children constantly sad because of choices you made is one of the most painful realities imaginable. I truly hope you'll take this to heart and maybe, just maybe, give your marriage another chance. I've been thinking a lot about the word freedom lately. Back then, it felt like a prize I had earned, like I had finally broken free from something that was holding me back. But now, freedom feels like silence. It feels like empty rooms, cold coffee, and nobody to share inside jokes with. It feels like brushing my teeth alone and crawling into a bed that stays perfectly made because there's nobody tossing and turning beside me. Freedom feels a lot like loneliness. Sometimes I catch myself scrolling through my old texts with him. I read his long, heartfelt messages trying to understand what was going wrong between us. He used to say things like, "I just want us to be happy again." Or "Tell me what you need, and I'll try." And I remember how I used to roll my eyes at them. I was so wrapped up in my own resentment and that false sense of empowerment from strangers online that I couldn't hear the desperation in his voice. One evening, after a particularly hard therapy session, I called him just to hear his voice. I told him I missed the way he used to laugh at the dumbest things, how he made pancakes every Sunday, and how he never forgot to ask how my day went even when he was exhausted. He listened quietly, said he appreciated the call, and then gently reminded me that some things, once broken, don't always get fixed. My therapist says that real healing doesn't come from forcing someone else to forgive you. It comes from accepting responsibility and making peace with the damage you've done. And I've done a lot. I've hurt someone who truly loved me. I've confused and disappointed our children. I let bitterness and boredom convince me that I deserved more, without recognizing what I already had. The truth is, I wanted a different version of happiness, one that didn't involve effort or patience. I thought happiness meant excitement and constant validation. But I've learned that the deepest kind of love is quiet. It's coming home to someone who always saves you the last slice of pizza. It's folding laundry together on a Saturday and laughing about something silly the kids said. It's arguing and still choosing each other anyway. I had that once. I just didn't see it. Now, I do what I can to be a better mother. I show up for every school event, pack their lunches with little notes, and try to listen more. I still call their dad often, not to guilt him or beg for a second chance, but to make sure he knows how much the kids need him. And honestly, how much I still need him too. He always picks up the phone. He's always there. Even now. A few weeks ago, our youngest had a birthday. We agreed to celebrate it together for her sake. We baked a cake, sang off-key, and played board games like we used to. For a few hours, it almost felt like nothing had changed. But when it was time for him to leave, I caught myself watching the way he hugged each of the kids so tightly, and how he smiled through the pain. Then he gave me a soft nod, nothing more, and walked out the door. I stood there for a while, staring at the space he left behind, and it hit me all over again. I let go of someone who would have done anything for me. I don't know if we'll ever be a couple again. Maybe we're too far gone. But I do know that if I ever get that chance, I'll be better. I'll fight for him like he once fought for me. Not because I expect him to forgive everything I've done, but because I want to be someone worthy of that forgiveness. To anyone listening to this, if you're married and going through a rough patch, take a breath. Step back. Ask yourself if you've really done everything you can. Not everything to change them, but everything to understand them, support them, and work on yourself. Stop asking the internet for advice from people who don't know your life, your partner, or your history. A few kind words from strangers might feel good in the moment, but they won't clean up the mess afterward. Marriage isn't perfect. Sometimes it's messy and exhausting, but it's also the most beautiful kind of hard work you can do. The rewards don't come instantly, but when they do, they're worth everything. I thought I was choosing happiness. What I really chose was a longer road back to myself. I'm still on that road. I still cry sometimes. But now, those tears come with clarity and maybe even a little hope. So please, before you give up on love, ask yourself if you've given it your all. Not just your frustration, not just your complaints, but your heart. Because if you haven't, you might end up just like me, realizing too late that what you thought was missing was right in front of you the whole time. And this time, no amount of online support or validation can fill that void. Give your love one more chance.